Yeah. It's, check this out. So, seems a bit big for a sticker. And get to this. So yeah, that's awesome. Great Ronk builds them out of carbon fiber by hand. But he really worked on trying to make the curve right and just testing them on bikes, making sure they worked as best as possible. This is, in my opinion, probably the best open intake and the best short intake that you can possibly get, hands down. But remember, he's just some guy who does this every once in a while, you know, and it's super cool of him to work on this. And I have to say that talking with him, which is mostly my experience, not buying from him, but talking with him, he's just a good guy. So, special thanks to him, you know, appreciate it, man. So we're gonna put this on here, take off what I've got, which, you know, I still recommend. You're on a budget, get yourself the Dayco 71381 intake hose. You're gonna have to go to like AutoZone or an O'Reilly's, something like that in your area, and you're gonna need to tell them like, hey, it's Taurus radiator hose, it should be made by Dayco. There's probably an equivalent, and you have to use that word with these guys, you know. It's a 71381, and it's about this long. It has some beautiful curves in it, so like you can use it full length, and that's basically what the guy from NTX, Man in the Box, back on the Total Ruckus forum, he came up with the design. He tested it, and a lot of credit should go to him for finding this radiator hose that worked the best for the system. It has the best length. It has the best, like the way that it gently curves. There's nothing more than like really a 45-degree angle on this thing, and it just comes right out here. It's perfect for the bike. A lot of argument about short intake versus long intake. Short intake clearly has more throttle response. When you blip the throttle, when you just jam on it, you're gonna notice on a short intake the bike moves faster. I'd say there's some discussion as to whether like a mid-length will give you the best top speed, maybe even a long, but like you've got a couple of different ones. The TVR intake, that's an open intake, is kind of what I consider to be a mid-range, a mid-length intake, all right? And some of the guys who actually, I can tell, know their shit and they take time to tune, I really see a lot of them do really well with the mid-length. For me, where I'm at, it's going to be short intake every time. I have hills, I have stop and go in the city. I don't have a lot of opportunities to hit like a top speed, like on a nice flat. I don't have a lot of flats. I have one flat kind of that's about a mile long on my way to work, but I'm not really, I can't be on it. There's usually traffic and stoplights, and so I'd rather have the acceleration for 99% of my ride than have 1 second of hitting top speed. So short intake, definitely for me. Obviously, those are all opinions on what I've gathered so far on the various lengths of intake, okay? So, you know, let's get this on my bike. I'm gonna try to move the camera up here, and then we'll just pull off my short intake. I'll kind of show you where to go as far as like, if you're gonna build yourself a short intake, have it look about like this. And I would say, you know, you wanna start off jetting it, probably. You wanna take that slow jet. The stock one is a 35. You're going to want to bump that up to a 38 for almost any time that you delete the stock air box. You probably can't see it on another bike, but anytime you delete the stock air box, the very next step is going to be take the slow jet in the carburetor, move it to a 38. Just, you can try different things down the road, but I mean, that's, if you just want to see what's going to work, probably it's going to work 99% of the time. On a short intake, what's nice is you can use the stock main jet, and the main jet, it comes stock 75. And if it's short enough intake like mine, 75 is going to work. It may not be the best, but clearly 85 is going to be way off. 85 is probably too big for anything, honestly. The full-length Daco hose, like I was talking about, that usually comes from some of these places with a 38 slow jet and a 85 main jet. 82 seems to work way better. 85 is a bit rich, but it'll get you moving. So yeah, once again, short intake. The other nice thing is you take that full-length hose, you can cut it into 2, almost 3 sections that have a real nice 45 that'll keep it away from the wheel. I've got a bit of clearance between here and the wheel, which is, you know, perfect. You know, it shakes, it's not going to hit the tire, great. But you don't want a 90-degree turn like right from the carb, you know, from your filter or from your intake, however you do it. If you do an open intake or whatever, you don't want it to go this way and then turn suddenly, because the air is just going to move real fast through here, slow through here, and it's going to make it tumble and be disrupted. Disrupted air going into the carb just doesn't pull fuel from the needle in the same way. You want nice flow of air, and it sucks the gas right out of the, not the needle, but the jet. And I think that's really the theory behind the slow or the short intake. Is you have a long intake here, every time the engine tries to suck it, it has to get all this air moving, and it takes a second to get it moving. And so it doesn't pull gas as quickly from the jet right away. When you have a short intake, that little amount of air gets sucked really quick, and that fuel hits the engine right away. And I think that's why you see much better throttle response on a short intake. You know, and I mean, so to that end, having a filter on the intake is gonna probably save your engine down the line. It's gonna help keep any kind of grime out of there. And I've seen these engines where, you know, where the cylinder is it looks as almost like it's scratching, you know, like it's scratched inside of there, and that can cause a loss of compression, as far as I understand it. And loss of compression means you don't have nearly as much power. So there's a risk with an open intake, but with an air filter on there, the air doesn't move as fast and grab fuel from the jet as much. So you kind of have to take the risk, you know, your way. What kind of conditions do you drive in? Like, I don't live in a sandy location. I've heard some about, you know, I know Gray Ronk actually lives in a sandier location, and so there's more risk of like sand and maybe even bugs flying into your intake. And if a decent sized bug flies in your intake and gets past your carb, you know, it can mess up your valves. You know, it can bend your valve, and then your valve's not seating properly, and once again, no compression. So some things to think about. The risk has been fine for me. I've run an open intake for about 2 years, at least a solid year, maybe 2 years on this bike. And, you know, I don't really think I've had any problems because of that. So, yeah, you know, but I babbled long enough about intakes. Let's actually put this one on. I'm going to move the camera up and get some work done on it. Just pull it off right at the carb. I don't think we need to pull the carb off for this. All right. I'm just going to use the screwdriver to push the rubber just a little bit. It's pretty loose. So anyways, all right, so here is what I was running. And you can tell that it's not very long at all. So there's a really small section of that Daco 71381 that I was telling you guys about. All right, so got about an inch, 2 inches, and then from there, 3.5. So the tube that I'm running is about 2.5, 3 inches, about almost 3 inches, okay? And then the stack that I've got a 3D printed stack from Small Engine Velocity, thanks Caesar, sticking out about 3 inches there. So I was running that about 6 inches there. So let's get this on. Now, he sent these directions, which, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, but man, they look awesome. Just making sure that you've got all 4 parts, you know, kind of where to attach it, really. I mean, it's not difficult, but, and then he's got, so, and what I've heard people say is they'll run a RonkStack, especially like at shows and stuff like that, and on a nice day, but that if they're worried about their engine on a regular basis, you know, you can actually get this, it's a uni like tube filter, or sock filter rather, and it's got the spring in it. So you pull the spring out of it, and then you can wrap it around your RonkStack. So I'll probably get one of those. It looks green in this picture, but it's more of that Tiffany or Seafoam or whatever that a lot of people paint their bikes. So it could actually work with your color scheme in a lot of ways too. So nice instructions there. And so let me get at least one of, so he says, I've read through the instruction, and he says that if you're worried about it, you can put one here and one there. But it really, the 3 or 4 times that I've tried to pull this out, it's, you've got to work with it for a minute before it just slides out. So I'm going to get it in there. I'm going to feel inside to make sure that it's not causing like a ridge. Because obviously, I mean, we've set this whole thing up in order to flow nicely. If I make a ridge, like if I take this, the carbon fiber intake, the stack, and I move it out here, you can see the air comes, wraps around that lip, is going to cause turbulence. So if you can look in there, rub your finger around the edge where it goes, and it's a nice smooth transition, then that's good. And I'm just going to try to go about as far in as I can go while making sure that it doesn't create that lip. I know that later on down the road, in theory, I might be able to move this a little bit to change the length, tune it. I'm going to mostly do that with jets. I have not found an inch or two within an inch of length to make a big enough difference that I'll probably do that. If I get to the point where my bike's doing 50, 51, then yeah, I think it's something I would come back to and play with to maybe get the jet as close to this as possible, and then see if I can change it a little bit to grab that last little, you know, quarter mile, half mile, maybe even a mile, you know, who knows at that point. But we're not that close with this bike as far as making sure everything's 100%. I want basic good enough. I don't want it to fall out. I'm happy. So that's where we're at with that. And I'm going to put that on, remembering to put it on in a way. I always work at my bike from this side, the seat's here, so I want to be able to get that. And I'm going to take the hose clamp and I'm going to go down just enough. I don't want to squeeze it so it'll still get over the lip in the lip on the carb, but I don't want to have to hold it while I put it on there. All right. And even like I may have even tightened too much here, the fact that it's gripping on, well, when it goes over that lip, it's going to want to push that rubber out, the silicone out, and if that's right there, it's going to inhibit that. So let's kind of see what I can do here. Oh, all right, yeah, maybe I'll try to move it out of the way first. Of course, it's fresh too, so, oh, look at that. That is extremely satisfying. And then I'm going to loosen that back up. So it's still nice to have it like somewhere where it wasn't going to move, but I didn't put it on the very end. And so I'm going to try to put that hose clamp. People like to go on this side of the ridge or that. I'm going to go on the ridge and a little bit past it is my theory. So probably not too important. And then before I get too far, let's just check. And that hose has to be dealt with maybe today. I really like how that looks. If I move it around, it's not going to hit the tire. It's real close to the tire, but it's just absolutely perfect. So, oh man, that looks so awesome too. I'm just stoked. This thing is one of those dream parts for me, you know? I tend to spend money on things that were either incredibly necessary or the added bonus of money will really make a big amount of... Let me try to explain that better, because clearly I'm not. If I could spend $20 and it's 90% as good as me spending $100, and that would get me 95%. Like that last 5% oftentimes is not worth the extra $80 to me, you know. So I make a lot of decisions based on that, where it's like, should I spend the money on a nicer intake, or should I spend the money on, you know, like a CDI? And I'm like, I'm probably going to pick CDI. CDI is, you know, I can get a CDI for $50 sometimes. So it's like, I make a lot of choices based on this. This is a beautiful part, and chances are it'll outlast my other intakes. So ultimately it'll probably be cheaper, but definitely hard to make that step. So I'm really stoked. I would not have been able to make this decision, and to have one is just awesome. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So that's it. It's installed. I'm going to start up. See you in a second.